There we go. All right, guys. So the topic of today is building rapport and developing the need really quickly. So when we go into a business, we can tailor the approach and tailor the demo as if it's custom fit for them. So I'm going to pause every few minutes so we can just kind of talk and see why we do what we do. Because, guys, you all need to be selling at a high level because you're the one doing all the training. So if you guys are the ones doing the field training, if your sales and your skill set is not up to par, then it's going to limit the ability of you being able to train your field trainers. How cool would it be if you guys had a new agent go out and write 15,000 next week? Well, I'll tell you what, the only way that you're ever going to have a new agent have a big week like that is if you can show them on how to have a big week like that. It is not very common for you to have an agent that can outsell you. That honestly has never happened. It's very rare for that to happen. So you have to raise your own skill set so you can show your other agents below you on how to up your skill set as well. So it's more important for us to train you guys, market directors, field directors, and sales professional 5s and 4s, so you guys can raise your own skill set so we can have everybody, the proficiency within the agency can just get better. And one of the big things about doing what we do is just making sure that we're building rapport effectively and that we're not building too much rapport, guys, because the last thing you want to do is when you first sit down with somebody is spend 10 or 15 minutes just building rapport, because then it's almost like it's past that buying line. It's almost like, hey, you've already spent all the amount of time they're going to allow with you. You better get to it real quick. So I don't spend hours and hours and, 10, 15 minutes building rapport. I spend like 2 minutes. Okay. You don't have to be a top producer. You don't have to spend a ton of time building rapport. I sprinkle in rapport building all throughout the demo. So I'm not spending a ton of time up front. I'm spending a little bit of time up front building that trust, a little bit more on the indirect cost page, and a little bit more in the middle part right before the buying atmosphere. I really put the dagger in with showing lots of photos and just, massive power names that, they've already built the need. And then you pack a power punch with showing some awesome power name photos. So by the time I get to the buying atmosphere, they're like at an all-time high. They were like I pretty much know if they're going to buy it or not by the time I get to the buying atmosphere, because I sprinkle in rapport building all throughout the presentation. It's not just you just build rapport, because there's a lot of people that the only time they ever use names is in the approach, and then they never drop any names the rest of the demo, and that is not the right way. You got to sprinkle in name dropping, and during the demo, figure out which names click for that person. And sometimes you may not even find a name that clicks until the very end or until the buying atmosphere when you're showing photos, but that's okay. So that way, when you do the close, you can close with some power names and just really tailor the names specific for them. So I like to keep it short and sweet. And let's start first, guys, just with the approach. I'm going to keep this, most of the rapport building I'm going to teach you guys is in the introduction, but I'm going to teach you guys a couple small things on the approach to really tailor the approach. Okay. The last thing you want to do is make it sound like you're a peddler. Make it sound like you're going to literally every business to business, because that's what it sounds like for a lot of folks when they go, I'm going to all the businesses out here. No, we need a laser. Like when we go in, yes, we're going to all the businesses, but we really need to laser the approach. And really that very first line of, we are going to all the car shops. So whatever business you're going into, you just laser it to that kind of business. Hey, we're going into all the mechanic shops here in Vail, North Carolina. We are going to all the Firestones, all the Dollar Generals, whatever business it is, that one little thing, and you laser it to that specific kind of business. And you may need to go into your notes before you go into a business and just look at some other names of some of the other locations and the manager's names. Yeah, you may have to do 2 minutes of pre-approach, but that's just called being a professional. So making sure that before you go into a business, you have about 3 to 5 names that you're going to drop from other either similar businesses in that exact same kind of niche or just other locations managers. Okay. So making sure that you spend the time in your car to look over your notes. And if you don't really have a name of that specific business, go to the master's names list that we have. We have a list of every single business that we've kind of done business with. And you like, oh yeah, Firestone, 3 hours away, but hey man, I know the manager's name, Brandon from Raleigh or from Charlotte. I'm going to use his name because we have already worked with that Firestone in that other location. So making sure that you just use the tools. So when you go into a business, it's game on. So tailoring the approach. And also one other thing is having photos ready. So let me actually see if I can share my screen on my iPad. That actually would be nice. I'm on my computer right now. Let's do this real quick. Here we go, guys. So one thing that's really big. Let's do this. See, I have a few photos already kind of just waiting. So whenever I walk into a business, I'm excited. Like if they're going to try and battle me, in the approach, I already have a few photos kind of, let me just kind of pull up Harnett County. Hey, let's go to Todd's territory. Let's go to Columbus County clients real quick. So if I'm going into a nursing home, I already remember this lady, Tina Nance, was a big director of a nursing home out there in Columbus County. So whenever I was working in Whiteville, North Carolina, if I was ever talking to anybody who was a nurse or in the medical field, I was going to show this photo within 10 seconds. If they want to sit down with me, or if I was sitting down with them, this photo was going to be shown if they were in the medical field. This was my go-to punch for that situation. Tina Nance, her and her name was going to be shown. If I was ever talking to somebody in the church business, guys, these people were customers from 7 years ago. This gentleman right here, John and Vicki McPherson, he's a pastor of one of the churches in Chadburn, North Carolina. If I was ever talking to anybody who was big into the church industry, which Columbus County, it's everybody goes to church there, twice a week, I was going to show this name immediately. Okay. So if I was going to talk to a teacher, this was Donna Bullock. So just knowing that you guys have these pictures ready. So whatever business you're going into, you have a power punch name. Okay. So I'm going to pause there. Are there any takeaways so far from this right now? Or any things that's like, oh, wait, that's something that I can do right now, or that's something that I haven't been doing?
Kyle, I can just tell you from my point of view, the pictures are huge, and I take a lot of them with my clients, but I hardly ever show any of them. And that's my own fault, but yeah, it does pack a punch.
Thank you, Greg.
And man, Kyle, it's making me want to go back in and redo my county. I love the way that you've done that.
And y'all, and I think a lot of us have pictures with clients. I think really the first step is just putting them in an album, and that way you can just pull it up real quick. That's really the first step to that, right?
That was my next question, Brad. Kyle, is that an app or something that you have set up with a particular color or a particular album?
Yep. So first you set it up. You can get the app, and honestly, I actually don't use the app anymore because the app is kind of laid out a little bit differently. The new update on the app is not my favorite, so I'm just using my Facebook right now. So I'm literally on Facebook right now on the Facebook app. I just got into my Facebook fan page right there. So you can customize this either on the app or just on Facebook. So this is just the Facebook part right now. And all you have to do is just, create an album and then put the customers in that album. So you can say, Catawba County, Lincoln. And so, if I'm cold calling out in Lincoln County, I already have a bunch of photos. Or if I'm going back to Gaston County, I got a ton of customers in Gaston County. I got 403 photos I can show people with their names. And, there's no way I can remember all those people's names. So just looking at these pictures, for about 10, 15 minutes before I go cold calling or just open up some new businesses in Gaston County, man, it makes all the difference. I've got, power names and, not all these names I'm going to use, but, I know like the big 10, 15 pictures I'm going to show the power names of, whether it's the police chief or fire chief or just the factory in Bessemer City that I serviced a few years ago, Brian Bowen, just knowing those ahead of time. So yeah, just taking the time, guys, spend, 30 minutes to an hour of just putting these pictures and organizing them. Cause we all work different areas. And if you have, 3 different towns that you work in, just organize the pictures for those towns. It'll make things a lot easier for you. So let's go to the next part. So guys, that's really the approach of just having that. So you can build rapport and just know that if you're ever doing an approach and they don't sit down with you, use the second approach from the sales talk. It is gold. It is perfect. Like, hey, you know what? I get that a lot. let me ask you, Mrs. Jones, if you couldn't, if you got sick today, I mean, you couldn't work for, 3 months, 6 months to a year, I'm sure you would want some extra cash coming in, correct? Exactly. That's why I'm here. And then so the second approach is crucial. If they don't sit down with you, then what I do, my third approach is honestly, I'm like, hey, you know what? No big deal. I kind of agree to their objection. I understand that you're busy, Mrs. Jones. I hear you. This may not even be a good fit for you. But then what I do is I show pictures on this. I bring out my iPad and I just show them photos. Be like, hey, you seem like you're very well known around here. You probably know a bunch of my customers here in Columbus County, And then I just talk to them. Where'd you go to high school? Did you go to East Columbus? Did you go to West Columbus? Holy smokes, that's awesome, Mandy. If you went to West Columbus, you probably know Chris and Faith Todd. They're a young family with 2 young kids. They've been around here forever. They live right here in Chadburn, North Carolina. They're like, oh yeah. And then just show other photos of other people in the area. And I don't even really talk about insurance. I just show photos. Everybody knows Brian Batten. He works at IP International Paper. It's like the biggest business in Whiteville, North Carolina. Well, Brian, he's been a customer of mine for 6 years. How do you know Brian? And I just kind of spit game. Literally, I just spit game, showing some pictures, kind of showing off a little bit. And then I just kind of like, hey, so I just want to come in here, Caitlin, and introduce myself. You may like it, you may not, but I just want to give you the quick 3-minute overview of what it actually is. And then if you like it, we can go further. Do you have a place where we can sit down? So that's like my third approach. If they're not sitting down with me, the first 2 approaches, I will just casually transition to pictures, talk about them, 3D name drop them a little bit, and then tell them like, hey, this may be a good fit for you, may not. I'm just going to go ahead and give you the 3-minute overview of what it is, and then we can go further. Do you have a place where you can sit down? So that, guys, that's like my final approach. Now I figure that's actually worked very well, and it's got me a lot of appointments, maybe not for right then, but for later on down the road. And just know that the hardest people, when you're approaching businesses, guys, the hardest people to sit down with are the best prospects. Okay. If you can open them up, the people that are very unopen-minded, that you have to approach 3 or 4 times, when you sit down with those people, they're the customers that will be on the books for life. They're the ones that buy the most policies and that give you access to their businesses, and it really expands your business market. So when you sell those people, those are usually the power names that everybody else knows. So the harder to get them open-minded, the better the customer, I have realized. So let's go to the introduction. Okay, so let's go back to when you first sit down with somebody. Here's a couple things. Guys, some of this is super elementary, but I'm telling you, sometimes we get off the sales talk. So there's a couple rapport building questions that we have to ask every single time. So the first thing is just going back to selling 101. Before I even start talking about insurance, I just ask a couple basic questions just to kind of build some rapport. And here's the 2 main questions I ask. I'm like, hey, Greg, how long have you been here? Okay. How long have you been working here, Greg? And if they say 3 years or 2 years or 1 year, I'm like, oh, cool. Hey, Greg, where did you work at before here? So if they haven't been working there very long, I ask them, oh, cool, Greg, where did you work at before here? And the reason why I ask that is because I'm at the end of the demo, I'm going to get referred to that business. I'm going to put that in my memory bank so I can get referred to the business he used to work at the end. And then once he answers the question, I'm like, hey, Greg, are you from here originally? Did you go to high school here? Oh, cool. What high school did you go to? The reason why I asked that question is because if you're working your territory tight, you get to know a lot of people. And they're like, oh, yeah, I went to East Columbus High School. Whoa, you went to East Columbus High School? Was your principal Pat Beverly? Holy smokes. Yeah. So this guy, Alexander Singletary, he actually works for the sheriff's department here at Columbus County. He actually went to East Columbus High School as well. So already having, guys, I'm telling you, like, if you want to go next level, know where your customers went to high school. When I'm working in Gaston County, I literally know all the high schools: East Gaston, North Gaston, Hunter Huss, Forest View, Cherryville, Bessemer City, and literally even the private schools. So when somebody says that they went to a certain high school, South Point, I already have about 5 to 10 names of other customers that went to that same high school. Okay, I'm like, oh yeah, do you know so and 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 so? And this is just, you don't have to do this, guys, but I'm telling you, it will help you out. I promise you, it takes extra time, but it will help you out if you get to know this. So those are my 2 rapport building questions, and then I dive into it. So once I ask, those questions, how long have you been working here? And if they say, 1 or 2 years, oh, cool. Where'd you work at before here? And then I ask them, are you from here originally? And if they say yes, cool. Where'd you go to high school? Those are really the only 2 rapport building questions I ask before I dive into the actual demo itself. Okay. So I'm going to pause right there. Are there any takeaways so far? I know that's pretty simple, but anything that you guys, any takeaways or?
Hey Kyle, it's Josie. Just knowing the high schools, I know of the high schools in my area, but I don't really know where everybody went. So kind of digging into the high schools, because small town America, everybody knows each other from high school.
Correct, Josie. You guys, if you're working in Charlotte, which nobody is, I want to know that, because there's 1,000 high schools here in Charlotte, but I'm telling you, nobody's working in a city where they don't, if you're working, like I'm working in Gastonia, which is actually a really big city, which is big town. It's probably one of the biggest towns that anybody works in. But if I can connect with names of high schools, I know you guys can too. I know a lot of the territories you guys are working in is even smaller, right? So just know that, it will help you out. It gives some good rapport building questions as well. Like once you connect with somebody, you're like, oh yeah, you went to high school with Corey Jonas at East Gaston. Holy smokes. Do you know what he does nowadays? Yeah, he's actually he's a manager of the plant right there in Mount Holly. Yeah, he's been working there for like 5 years. He just got married. He has a son now. Like when you know this about your customers and you can say a story, they will never give you let me do my research on the company and let me get back to you at the end. They're going to make a decision. Like they're going to buy or not going to buy at the end. And it's not, if they don't buy, it's not going to be because they don't trust you. Okay. So let's go to the next part. So when we sit down with them, you have to be confident and assumptive at all times. Okay. So the way to ask the question, first you give to get, you kind of talk a little bit about what we do, so like I said, we work with family and heritage. We talk about all the bad stuff like cancer, heart disease, accidents. Everybody knows somebody that's gone through something like cancer. Gary, the foreman next door, unfortunately had a 6-month battle with cancer. Okay. Now, who's the closest person to you who's ever had to go through something like that? So make sure the only technical part about that, guys, is asking it, who is the closest person to you? Don't ask, do any of these concern you? Or do you know anybody that's had to go through that? Don't ask it that way, because it's a yes or no question. You want to ask it open-ended, like who is the closest person to you who's ever gone through something like that? Or, which one of these concerns you the most? You want to ask open-ended questions on this very first page, not a yes or no question. Because if you ask a yes or no question and they say no, like, do any of these concern you? And they say no, you're not going to sell them anything. Or do you know anybody that's ever had cancer before? And they say no, you just shot yourself in the foot, right? So make sure you ask questions that are open-ended and not yes or no. And then whatever they say, if they say cancer concerns them the most or accidents, this is exactly what you say. I hear that a lot. Why do you say that? And this is the part where you really get them engaged, and you have to ask follow-up questions and have a conversation with them. So if they say cancer, I hear that a lot. Why do you say that? And then let them speak. And then you say, so just in general, who's the closest person to you who's ever gone through cancer before? And ask them follow-up questions. What kind of cancer? Where they got their treatment? All the basic one-on-one questions, guys. And make sure you're spending that time in the front end and really creating the need. Okay. So then once you get there, you kind of transition right into the iPad, which is, holy smokes, Todd, this is going to make a lot of sense. That's what we do, is we help families financially when they go through situations just like that. And then you go right through the part of the iPad, right through the stats page. I'm not going to spend any time going over that, but I will skip ahead to the direct indirect cost page. So this page is probably going to be one of the most important things we're going to talk about today. And I tell Mrs. Jones, this is the most important page I'm going to show you. This is the reason why we have thousands of customers right here in Gastonia. Okay. So you guys, I keep this super simple. I keep this as simple as possible. So there's 2 costs that you face if you ever get sick. There's called direct costs, and then there's called indirect costs. So what direct cost is, this is what your health insurance covers. Now, everybody here already has good health insurance through the job. I assume that you have good health insurance as well, correct? You guys, I assume that they already have good health insurance because it's a win-win situation. Because if they say yes, then I'm already covering that objection of they already have good health insurance. But if they say, no, I don't have good health insurance, then I'm like, holy smokes. Okay, well, tell me about that. What kind of health insurance do you have? Because what that's going to do is it's going to build the need up for them. Because if they say that they don't have good health insurance and you're assuming that they do have good health insurance, be like, oh, wow. Well, I'm glad I'm here then, right? So assume that they already have good health insurance first. And then whenever they say what kind of health insurance they have, so you have Blue Cross Blue Shield, you have United Healthcare, Cigna, what health insurance do you have? Perfect. So John, that will take care of the direct cost up here at the top. Now we have nothing to do with that whatsoever. Nothing to do with that. What we specialize in is called the indirect cost, right? And these are all the bills that your health insurance cannot cover. And then we just ask them, a basic, just like the sales talk. Do you have any idea what I mean whenever I say indirect cost? Okay. And just be prepared, guys, when you say that, ask this question, be prepared for a weak answer, because most people don't give the best answer or answer that we want to have. But I don't care what they say. If they say copays, deductibles, maybe, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, kind of. And then I kind of give them a little bit like, hey, these could be anything, and then this is where I kind of build some rapport with them a little bit more. If I haven't already, I'm like, hey, so John, I know you said you've been here for 3 years. Are you married, John? And he's like, yeah. Okay. Awesome. Does your wife have a job as well? Perfect. What does she do for a living? I just kind of build a tiny bit more rapport with them if I haven't already. Do you have kids? Holy smokes. So John, you guys are a dual income family. You and your wife both have great jobs. You guys have 2 kids who are still in school. If either one of you guys got sick, what do you think will be an indirect cost for your family? And then let them respond. And usually if you kind of tailor it like that, they're going to give a little bit better response. And then once this happens is when we ask the critical question 1. And critical question 1 is like a slam dunk question, because you're always going to get a pretty good response if you set it up the right way. And like, hey, John, and let me ask you a critical question. John, if you could, and we're still on this page, guys, so make sure that you haven't flipped the page yet. You're still staying on this page. John, if you couldn't work and your wife couldn't work for 6 months to a year or even longer, how would that impact your family financially? Okay, so ask, like, John, if you and your wife got sick today and couldn't work for 6 months to a year or even longer, how would that impact your family financially? And then you're still on this page, and whatever he says, bad, if he has a very good response that says like, yeah, we will be devastated, like, and you can tell that he's into it, then you can flip the page. But if he has a vague response like, oh, we'd be all right, or we'd be pretty bad, but I think that we make it. If they give a vague response or a weak answer, then I'll ask a follow-up question. But if he gives a powerful response that's like, oh yeah, like we'd be devastated, then I say, that's what this is for. And then I flip the page. So that's what we cover. We're going to help replace a lot of your lost income for you and your spouse, and kind of go into that. But if he gives a vague response, I'll ask a follow-up question that says this. I hear that a lot, John. Why do you say that for your family? Why do you say that for yourself or your family? So if he gives a vague response to the critical question, you just follow it up to say, I hear that a lot. Why do you say that for yourself and your family? And then I ask him, what bills would you worry about the most, John? What bills would you worry about the most? And that way he's like, oh, probably the mortgage, car payment. And then I say, so that's exactly what this is for. And then I flip the page. So that's what we cover. We're going to help replace all these indirect costs you see right here. A lot of your lost income and a lot of your lost savings, living bills, and just kind of go through this page right here, guys. And then, once you get done, just like the sales talk, ask them, which one of these indirect costs would affect your family the most, right? And then obviously you transition to the savings piece, letting them know that, it doesn't matter how big of a savings you have, your savings could get cut in half just like that with one illness. Okay. That's the last thing you want to do, is lose a lot of your investments, your college funds, retirement funds, or have to sell your house. So here's the last part, guys, is it's asking the critical question number 2. So you are right here on this page. You're right here on this page. You've already built the need. They've already talked about indirect cost. And then guys, I asked a critical question too. This is pretty important because you don't want to ask critical question two and then for them to say that they have a backup plan. Because if they say that they already have a good backup plan, it's going to be hard to get them protected. So you want them to say that they don't have a backup plan. So you want to eliminate all the other objections. Okay, so if they say, if you just ask the critical question two that says this, oh yeah, so do you have a backup plan for this right now? And they say, most people are going to say, oh, I have savings. So the way you ask critical question two is, it says this, hey, so Mrs. Jones, most people that I talk to, they don't have a backup plan like this. For you, Miss Jones, other than using your savings, do you have a backup plan that would take care of all these indirect costs right now? So that's exactly how it says. So for you, Mrs. Jones, other than using your savings, do you have a backup plan that would take care of all these indirect costs right now? And most of the time they say no. And then once they say no, I'm like, no big deal, because that's why I'm here. That's why we're getting people protected with some supplemental coverage. You know, that's why we do businesses with all the companies out here. Yep. And guys, that's pretty much it. I'm not going to go through much more of the introduction. That's probably, and then the last thing I would say is this is once you go through this next page, you kind of, I'm not going to teach you guys on this. You guys all know how to do that. And you read a claim, a testimonial, make sure you read the claim, a testimonial as if it's the last time you're ever going to read that claim. And the first time that, you know, how emotional it was the first time we read these claims. This is the first time they've heard it. And then I show some more photos. So once I read a couple claims, I show them some other photos of some other people that like, hey, Mrs. Jones, just so you know, I've been doing this for a long time. We have a lot of customers, and these are just a few of my personal customers. So here's another teacher. You said your wife's a teacher. Well, this is Kelly Dorsey. You know, she teaches at, you know, Whiteville High School. Her husband works at an international paper, you know, and just name drop a few more for about 30 seconds to a minute. And just really, this is where I show my power name. So if I've sold to like a fire chief or a manager of a big business or a restaurant owner, I really throw the power punch. It's called the uppercut power names. This is where you drop those uppercuts, is right here. And then once you get done, like, hey, like I said, we do business with a lot of companies. And then you go right back into your app to the 3 reasons why page. And the momentum should be at an all-time high because you've kind of tailored it to them. You make it make sense. And knowing that, guys, you guys have to be really good at asking those tough questions, staying on the indirect cost page for longer than you want to, because your rookies are if you're getting off that page too quick, your rookies are doing the same thing. And they are selling and not telling. You know, they're not asking those hard questions to ask. That is very important. So guys, I'm going to wrap up and let's, if you guys have any takeaways or feedback, I would love to hear it.
Greg, Caitlin, or Troy, what's y'all's biggest takeaway from all that?
Using questions, follow-up questions, top of the follow-up questions.
I definitely think using photos is something that I need to work on more. Just the way that Kyle toggles back and forth and just sprinkles them in throughout. I think that that's really strong because you're not just, you know, photo dumping on them in the beginning and then just never using it again. So I just like, Kyle, the way that you sprinkle it in throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kyle, it totally makes me want to sit down tonight and just put mine in by county. It just seems like a smart step that obviously after all this time I haven't done. And so I do appreciate that, man. It's super cool to see it all together, and I got to figure out how to do that. Hey, guys, I will ask this real quick. This is a leadership call, right? This isn't a call for Joe shit the rag bag or anything like that. We are leaders. We do it over Zoom for a reason, and one of those reasons is so that we can see everybody and see what's going on. Because if not, man, we could be running this call. You could just be logged on and walking around the house and doing nothing and not even paying attention. I would ask everybody to do a huge favor. Turn your cameras on. I mean, that's why we do it over Zoom. If not, we might as well just do conference calls, you know. So that's all I got to say about it. Just a little bit of frustration.
Hey, Kyle, question.
Yep.
How if you had to put a time frame on it, how long do you think it takes you from start of the first rapport building question to the buying atmosphere? How many minutes are you on those like 6 pages or whatever it is?
Between 10 and 15 minutes. I spend most of my time going over photos right after the 2 claims. The only time I really show photos is at the very beginning, is if I feel like I have to kind of knock that barrier down, or in the approach. But I spend most of my time photo dumping right after the 2 claims. And then also at the transition to close, guys. At the transition to close, I should have 2 or 3 names of people that I know that they know that are customers. And I say, this is the reason why everybody's getting it. So-and-so bought this for the peace of mind. And I show the photo of them. So-and-so got it for the security blanket because they don't want to be a burden on their family. They don't want to lose everything they work for. So-and-so, this young guy got this for the return of premium because he's young. He's the same age as you. He likes the fact that he's a peace of mind, but also saving money for the future. Now for you, Josiah, what's the biggest reason, what did you like the best? So I also photo dump a little bit at the end in the transition to close, just to kind of show proof of why they bought it. But yeah, it takes me 10 to 15 minutes to get to the buying atmosphere, and about 25 minutes to get all the way till to the transition and close part.
Well,
Cool.
actually,
Thank you,
another additional part of what I took from what you provided today was just probably just showing more pictures. I do show. I don't show pictures in the beginning, but I do show pictures like right there in the just before, like the buying atmosphere, and just asking additional questions, because I realize there's probably times that I have when I ask the question and they give me like a broad response, and I keep going. I don't ask that backup question or that question just to get more or explain why they gave me that kind of generic answer. I guess adding on building a need. So that was actually really good takeaway from you today, Kyle. Thank you.
Toy, man, I love it. If that's all you got, that's perfect, because the 1 or 2 of those questions will expand your comfort zone and will help you get inside businesses you want to get inside. Spending the time, because guys, that page is supposed to be a little bit uncomfortable, even for us. So making sure that we ask those hard questions, we'll split them open a little bit. We'll help develop the need and get them more open-minded.
Right.
That's awesome, guys.
Hey,
All right, guys. Well, today was great.
Kyle, thank you.